Imagine this. You wake up one morning in your usual bed, sunlight slicing gently through the window shades, the familiar hum of distant traffic whispering comfortingly from outside. Yet something is off, subtly, disturbingly off. A shadow stretches across your bedroom floor. It's ordinary, of course, just the vague darkness cast by furniture, by your body, by things. But today, this shadow seems different. It feels alive, watching you, studying your every movement with a quiet, unyielding intensity. You shake your head, dismissing the unsettling thought. But as you move, the shadow moves with you, not just following passively, but reflecting something deeper. Every suppressed thought, every unspoken fear, every hidden desire you've carefully tucked away seems suddenly exposed, cast onto the floor as clearly as your own silhouette. The shadow knows you. It embodies everything you don't want the world or yourself to see. Now imagine stepping out into the world, walking down familiar streets, seeing familiar faces, your friends, your coworkers, strangers on the sidewalk. All of them carry shadows too. And just like yours, their shadows betray their secrets. You see a man smiling warmly, yet his shadow seethes with quiet rage. You see a woman walking confidently, yet her shadow shrinks timidly, full of self-doubt. Everywhere you look, people walk hand in hand with the darker, hidden aspects of themselves. But here lies the paradox. As obvious as these shadows seem, everyone pretends they're invisible. Society has taught us to bury these shadows, to act as if they don't exist. We've perfected the art of masking our deepest wounds, hiding them behind curated smiles and carefully maintained facades. But what if that very shadow, your darkest impulses, your greatest shame, holds the keys to everything you truly desire? What if your shadow, the very thing you fear and despise, is actually your greatest teacher? Consider how much energy you expend each day keeping these shadows at bay. Think about the exhausting efforts you put into pretending you're always fine, always strong, always together. The shadow remains locked inside a psychological closet, chained by your refusal to face its existence. Yet no matter how firmly you lock the door, how diligently you ignore its whispers, it seeps into your life through unexpected cracks. Self-sabotage, addictions, anxieties, depression, toxic relationships. What if your shadow isn't something evil or destructive, but a messenger desperately trying to communicate vital truths about who you really are? What if the darkness you're fighting against is precisely where you must look if you ever want to find peace, self-knowledge, or genuine freedom? Ask yourself honestly, how long have you been running? How long have you tried to drown the shadow's voice through distractions, work, entertainment, substances, or endless self-improvement? And yet, every time you think you've silenced it, the shadow returns, stronger, more relentless, more demanding. Why? Could it be that this shadow, this persistent darkness, isn't merely your enemy, but your guide? Consider the great psychological paradox you face now. The harder you fight against your shadow, the stronger it becomes. Yet if you embrace it, confront it openly, it begins to lose its terrifying grip. How can something so feared become the very source of strength and clarity? How can darkness illuminate your path more powerfully than any conventional wisdom you've ever been taught? As Carl Jung once warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Perhaps what you've been calling fate, bad luck, or circumstance is really just your shadow desperately trying to teach you truths you've avoided your entire life. So ask yourself right now, what lies waiting in the depths of your shadow? What secrets have you kept hidden, even from yourself, that might reveal who you truly are beneath all the masks you've worn for so long? As you stand there, confronting the haunting silhouette of your hidden self, a powerful realization begins to form. A chilling, yet hopeful insight that will redefine how you see yourself, your struggles, and your potential. But to truly understand it, you must first step into the darkness, knowing fully that it will change you forever. Are you ready to discover why your shadow isn't the enemy you've feared, but rather the greatest teacher you'll ever encounter? Let's step forward, together, into the unknown. To understand why your shadow is such an imposing force, we must first unravel the roots of why it exists at all. At the heart of the shadow lies a profound psychological and philosophical mystery, one woven deeply into the fabric of human consciousness itself. Carl Jung, the brilliant and often misunderstood psychologist, famously described the shadow as the hidden, unconscious part of the human psyche, encompassing all the traits, desires, and fears that you reject or suppress. From childhood, you were taught what was acceptable and unacceptable, what behaviors would earn praise and which would bring punishment or rejection. Each time you internalized these lessons, pieces of yourself that didn't fit society's expectations were shoved down, becoming buried in the unconscious. These fragments of your true identity, your anger, vulnerability, greed, passion, or shame, never vanished. Instead, they fused into a deeper, more insidious entity: your shadow. The shadow is far more than just psychological baggage. It's an existential weight that subtly influences every decision you make. When Friedrich Nietzsche warned that whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster, he spoke precisely of the shadow's power. Your refusal to acknowledge certain truths about yourself doesn't erase them, it strengthens them. In rejecting your darkness, you paradoxically nourish it. You become blind to the subtle ways your shadow controls your emotions, sabotages your relationships, and steers you toward repeated patterns of suffering and disappointment. But why are we so compelled to bury these darker elements of ourselves? Philosophers like Arthur Schopenhauer suggested a brutally honest answer. Life itself is inherently painful, chaotic, and filled with conflict. To survive, we create illusions of order, control, and morality. The shadow threatens these illusions, revealing the uncomfortable truths about human nature, our selfishness, our irrational desires, and the often violent impulses lurking just beneath the veneer of civilized behavior. Facing these truths directly means confronting existential anxiety, an anxiety we desperately try to escape through distractions, entertainments, or addictions. In his unsettling masterpiece, Brave New World, Aldous Huxley captured this phenomenon perfectly. Society, Huxley argued, conditions us to avoid discomfort at all costs, to numb ourselves against any psychological or philosophical pain. And thus, the shadow remains ignored, pushed deeper into unconsciousness, silently growing stronger beneath layers of denial and distraction. Like Huxley's vision, modern society continually encourages us to reject any thoughts or feelings that threaten our neatly packaged identities, selling us endless products, self-help rituals, or entertainment distractions as soothing balm for our existential wounds. This cultural avoidance doesn't erase the shadow, it intensifies its influence. Jean-Paul Sartre insisted that we are condemned to freedom, condemned because we bear full responsibility for who we become. And yet, how many of us dare to acknowledge the true depth of that responsibility? Instead, we run from our authentic selves, hiding from our shadows behind masks of conformity, hoping to blend seamlessly into the faceless crowd. But here is the unsettling truth that lies beneath our avoidance. The shadow, in its most profound sense, isn't an aberration. It's not some unnatural part of us that should be destroyed or ignored. Rather, the shadow represents what Viktor Frankl called the struggle for meaning, the desperate battle to find significance in a universe indifferent to our existence. Frankl himself faced his shadow in the horrifying environment of a concentration camp, learning that acknowledging and integrating our darkest fears and impulses can become the very foundation of our psychological and spiritual resilience. We live in a culture of comfort, a society obsessed with positivity, pleasure, and constant self-improvement. Yet, paradoxically, mental health struggles have never been more rampant. Anxiety, depression, addiction, each a clear sign that the shadow refuses to remain silent, no matter how diligently we attempt to drown it out. Gabor Mate describes addiction not merely as a personal weakness, but as a desperate coping mechanism, an attempt to fill a deep void created by rejecting parts of ourselves we fear to face. The shadow persists precisely because it carries an urgent message. True fulfillment and healing come not from running away, but from courageously turning inward, confronting what we've spent a lifetime denying. The reason your shadow feels threatening is because acknowledging it shatters your carefully constructed identity, challenging your beliefs about who you think you are. And yet, this is exactly why it holds immense power as a teacher. Nietzsche argued passionately that growth requires destruction, a breaking apart of your false self, so a more authentic, powerful identity can emerge from the ruins. Your shadow, in this way, is both your destroyer and your savior, stripping away illusions to reveal the raw, unfiltered truth of your being. But what deeper consequences lie ahead if you continue ignoring this shadow? What silent forces are already shaping your reality, dictating your choices, and keeping you stuck in patterns of confusion, suffering, and repetition? To uncover these hidden, unsettling truths, and to finally break free, you must confront the stark reality of how your shadow controls your life. The question now becomes not whether you have a shadow, but whether you're brave enough to listen to what it desperately wants to teach you. When you deny your shadow, it doesn't disappear. It simply sinks deeper, embedding itself quietly into every corner of your subconscious. This silent infiltration might seem harmless at first. After all, how dangerous can something hidden from your conscious awareness truly be? Yet this shadowy force quietly molds every facet of your life, silently controlling your choices, emotions, relationships, and even your self-perception. Think about your everyday decisions, the partners you choose, the career paths you pursue, or the battles you inexplicably pick. On the surface, these might feel like conscious choices driven by logic or ambition. But beneath this rational veneer lies a more unsettling truth. Your shadow exerts a hidden gravitational pull, leading you toward situations that reflect the very issues you're trying to avoid. Psychologists call this phenomenon repetition compulsion, a subconscious tendency to recreate familiar patterns of pain and struggle. Your shadow, unresolved and unheard, seeks expression in relationships or situations that mirror your inner conflicts. For example, someone who secretly believes they're unworthy of love repeatedly finds themselves drawn to emotionally unavailable partners. Each relationship painfully reinforces their belief until they confront the underlying shadow belief itself. But why would your mind drive you to seek such suffering again and again? Cognitive biases and neurological wiring offer a disturbing insight. Familiarity feels safer, even if it's painful, because the brain craves predictability. The shadow capitalizes on this cognitive blind spot, pushing you toward repetition rather than growth. Your subconscious would rather experience familiar pain than risk the uncertainty and discomfort of truly confronting and healing your deepest wounds. At a societal level, this hidden dynamic plays out even more dramatically. Whole cultures can become trapped in collective shadows, manifesting in destructive behaviors, violence, oppression, or extreme polarization. Each of these manifestations is the shadow desperately demanding attention, emerging because societies refuse to acknowledge their darker aspects. Carl Jung warned extensively about this societal shadow, describing how collective denial inevitably erupts into wars, mass hysteria, prejudice, or self-destructive movements. Look at modern society today. Despite unprecedented technological advancement and wealth, mental illness, isolation, and addiction continue skyrocketing. Anxiety is normalized. Depression is epidemic. Why? Because the shadow, repressed and ignored, has found fertile ground in a culture built on distraction, superficiality, and escapism. Social media platforms, designed to connect us, paradoxically fuel our deepest insecurities and fears. We desperately chase validation online, yet feel emptier and lonelier than ever. Our shadow feeds on this contradiction, thriving in the emotional vacuum left by superficial digital relationships. Neurologically, our brains become addicted to quick dopamine hits, perpetually drawn to temporary relief rather than lasting fulfillment. This cycle reinforces the shadow's power. The more we avoid deep introspection and meaningful connection, the stronger the shadow's silent grip grows, leading to anxiety, depression, and existential emptiness. Consequences we rarely link directly to our inner refusal to acknowledge uncomfortable truths. Philosophically, Nietzsche and Sartre both warned of this existential danger. Nietzsche proclaimed that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Without a compelling purpose, one rooted in authenticity and self-awareness, we drift aimlessly, controlled unknowingly by our shadow. Sartre, too, insisted that we must face the inherent anxiety of true freedom, or remain forever enslaved by hidden psychological forces we refuse to acknowledge. But perhaps the most sinister consequence of ignoring your shadow isn't merely individual or societal dysfunction, it's spiritual emptiness. When you abandon parts of yourself deemed unacceptable, you fracture your sense of wholeness. Life becomes shallow, disconnected, empty. You chase fleeting pleasures, relationships, achievements, always feeling incomplete. Yet this chronic dissatisfaction isn't random. It's your shadow desperately trying to communicate that something essential, your true self, remains lost in darkness, waiting to be reclaimed. This profound sense of emptiness becomes normalized over time. You tell yourself it's normal to feel disconnected, restless, anxious, or perpetually dissatisfied. Society even encourages this belief, promoting endless consumption, distraction, and escapism as acceptable responses to existential discomfort. Yet beneath the facade, your shadow grows increasingly restless, demanding that you acknowledge the parts of yourself you've forsaken. You may think you've successfully buried your darker impulses and painful memories, yet they manifest in subtle but destructive ways. Addictions, anger outbursts, emotional numbness, or chronic anxiety. Psychologist Gabor Mate poignantly argues that addiction, in all its forms, is fundamentally a symptom of deep emotional pain. Pain your shadow carries silently because you've refused to consciously confront it. Addiction isn't merely chemical dependence or bad habits. It's your shadow desperately attempting to fill an existential void created by self-rejection. Now, feel the weight of these unseen consequences. How long can you continue living half awake, controlled by forces you refuse to acknowledge? How long can you ignore the shadow's urgent call for authenticity, growth, and genuine healing? The shadow demands to be felt because it holds the keys to profound self-understanding and liberation from repetitive suffering. As you grasp the seriousness of the unseen forces shaping your reality, you stand at a crucial crossroads. A powerful choice emerges. Continue sleepwalking through life, driven by unconscious compulsions and hidden shadows, or courageously step toward profound self-awareness, shattering the illusions that keep you trapped. But how can you break free from something so deeply ingrained, so subtly powerful? The answer requires rebellion, a radical, transformative act of psychological and spiritual liberation that will turn everything you've known upside down. The shadow has haunted you long enough. Are you ready to rebel, to finally discover the freedom that comes from confronting everything you've always feared? Breaking free from your shadow isn't about conquering it, defeating it, or denying its existence any longer. It's about embracing a radical rebellion, one of profound acceptance, fierce honesty, and courageous self-awareness. This rebellion demands you challenge everything you've been taught about good and evil, right and wrong, strength and vulnerability. It compels you to stare directly into the darkness you've spent your entire life running from and acknowledge it as an essential, undeniable part of your humanity. Your rebellion begins with one uncomfortable truth. You can never escape your shadow by ignoring it. The harder you suppress, deny, or fight against it, the more powerful it becomes. But paradoxically, when you finally turn toward it with open eyes, embracing rather than resisting its existence, the shadow's power transforms. Instead of controlling you from the depths of your subconscious, it becomes your greatest source of wisdom, strength, and clarity. The first revolutionary step is to shift your perspective entirely. understand that your shadow isn't a villain, it's a messenger. Every uncomfortable feeling, every recurring mistake, every pattern of self-sabotage carries a crucial message from your deepest self. As Carl Jung emphasized, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. To heal, to truly understand who you are and what you're capable of becoming, you must openly and courageously embrace your shadow, welcoming its uncomfortable truths. This means asking difficult questions without flinching. What parts of myself have I labeled bad or unacceptable? Which desires, fears, or truths am I hiding, even from myself? What painful memories or emotions am I avoiding at all costs? By asking these questions, you create cracks in the carefully constructed mask you've worn for years. The more honest you become, the more your authentic self, shadow included, emerges, powerful and free. Historically, those who confronted their shadows became the boldest and most authentic figures we admire today. Nietzsche dared to question society's deeply ingrained morality, embracing his shadow to pioneer entirely new ways of thinking about human potential. Viktor Frankl, imprisoned in unimaginable darkness, discovered meaning precisely by confronting, not fleeing, his shadow's message of despair. Their courage to face their deepest fears and darkest impulses allowed them to transform profound suffering into revolutionary wisdom. To break free, you must adopt this radical honesty. Whenever you feel triggered by anger, jealousy, anxiety, or shame, instead of immediately reacting or suppressing these emotions, pause. Ask yourself, what message is my shadow trying to communicate through this feeling? Each painful emotion is a clue pointing directly to the wounds you've ignored, denied, or hidden. When you bravely confront these emotions head-on, their power diminishes, replaced by insight, self-understanding, and genuine strength. Yet embracing your shadow is more than just introspection. It demands action. Begin deliberately engaging with situations you've habitually avoided. If vulnerability terrifies you, practice expressing your true feelings openly with someone you trust. If fear of failure paralyzes you, intentionally pursue projects that might fail. By willingly stepping into discomfort, you show your shadow that you no longer fear it. Gradually, these once terrifying scenarios become sources of empowerment, confidence, and profound personal growth. This revolutionary rebellion requires cultivating deep self-compassion. Remember, your shadow isn't a moral failure. It's human nature itself. Everyone carries darkness. Everyone battles fears, insecurities, impulses they deem shameful. When you forgive yourself for your human imperfections, your shadow loses its hold. You stop judging yourself by impossible societal standards and start seeing yourself with kindness, curiosity, and understanding. Self-compassion becomes a powerful ally, transforming darkness into a source of profound, emotional healing. Imagine now living life this way, fearlessly authentic, no longer held captive by unspoken anxieties or hidden shame. Picture relationships founded on radical honesty, careers fueled by genuine passion, decisions shaped not by unconscious compulsions, but conscious, intentional choices. This reality becomes achievable the moment you stop running from your shadow and instead harness its incredible wisdom and strength. But this rebellion isn't just individual, it carries revolutionary potential for society itself. Imagine communities that encourage emotional honesty rather than toxic positivity. Cultures that embrace vulnerability as true strength. Societies built not on superficial images, but authentic human connection. By confronting your own shadow, you inspire others to courageously face their darkness, initiating profound, collective transformation. This rebellion demands bravery, but the reward is extraordinary. Freedom, authenticity, and genuine fulfillment. Your shadow, once a feared enemy, becomes a trusted ally, teaching you more clearly than any guru or therapist ever could. Its wisdom guides you toward true self-awareness, deeper connection, and the liberation you've always secretly craved. Now, standing at the threshold of genuine transformation, ask yourself this: What truths lie hidden within your shadow, waiting to be discovered? Are you ready to reclaim your power, authenticity, and deepest potential from the darkness you've spent your entire life running from? Prepare yourself now, because your journey isn't finished. The greatest and final realization still awaits you. A truth so profound, so transformative, it will alter forever how you see yourself and your place in this world. The shadow has guided you this far, but its ultimate message remains hidden. To uncover it, you must step deeper into the darkness, ready to confront the final and most powerful revelation of all. Are you ready to finally understand the ultimate truth your shadow has been patiently waiting for you to discover? After journeying through the unsettling depths of your shadow, confronting its hidden forces, and learning the transformative power of embracing its truths, you now stand at the threshold of the final, most profound realization. This ultimate truth isn't just psychological, it's existential, spiritual, and deeply liberating. It's a revelation that will permanently change how you understand yourself, your struggles, and your very existence in the world. Your entire life, you've been conditioned to believe that happiness and fulfillment come from eradicating or transcending your darkness, your flaws, your shadow. Society promised that when you finally fix your brokenness, when you finally overcome your inner demons, you'll achieve lasting happiness, success, or enlightenment. But the shadow's ultimate message is exactly the opposite. Your greatest power, deepest fulfillment, and most authentic self lie not in transcending your shadow, but in integrating it. You are not broken. You are inherently whole, but only when you accept all parts of yourself, especially those you once rejected. This profound realization reveals a truth society rarely acknowledges. Human wholeness isn't perfection, it's radical acceptance. Your struggles, flaws, and darker impulses aren't barriers to your fulfillment. They are vital parts of your complete, authentic self. It's precisely because of your shadow, not despite it, that you possess depth, resilience, compassion, wisdom, and strength. Consider this carefully. The world's most powerful healers, teachers, artists, and visionaries have always emerged from darkness. Carl Jung's profound psychological insights arose directly from his personal confrontations with his shadow. Nietzsche's revolutionary philosophies sprang from his relentless questioning of his own darkness and society's hidden hypocrisies. Viktor Frankl transformed unimaginable suffering into a profound framework for finding meaning in the human experience. Each discovered profound meaning precisely because they refused to run from their shadows. Your shadow has patiently waited for you to understand this. It isn't something that must be fixed or escaped. It's something to integrate, honor, and harness. It is your greatest teacher precisely because it reveals your most authentic truths. This realization frees you from the exhausting pursuit of perfection. You no longer need to hide, suppress, or escape your humanity. Instead, you can embrace the messy, complicated, paradoxical reality of being fully human, simultaneously capable of immense darkness and extraordinary light. This acceptance opens the door to genuine fulfillment, self-understanding, and lasting inner peace. You'll discover that within your shadow lies profound wisdom. Your anger teaches you boundaries. Your fear shows you what matters most. Your shame reveals areas needing healing. Your pain unveils your greatest potential for compassion and connection. By integrating these lessons, you transcend superficial happiness, tapping into a far deeper, enduring sense of purpose and wholeness. Imagine finally walking through life authentically, no longer fragmented, no longer hiding parts of yourself in shame. Picture relationships founded on radical honesty and compassion, creative pursuits infused with the power of your whole, authentic self. You will no longer chase validation from external achievements or superficial relationships. You'll carry within yourself an unshakable sense of worth and belonging. And as you accept your shadow, something extraordinary happens. Your fear dissipates. Because when you fearlessly embrace all parts of yourself, No external judgment or circumstance can threaten your core identity. You become unbreakable, not by strength or denial, but by complete self-awareness and radical self-acceptance. Yet this powerful insight doesn't end with you. It has the potential to transform everyone around you. By embodying authenticity, you silently give others permission to confront their own shadows. You break cycles of denial, repression, and generational suffering. You foster deeper, more genuine relationships and build communities rooted in radical honesty, emotional courage, and true empathy. Ultimately, the shadow's greatest lesson is love, not the sentimental, superficial love sold by society, but unconditional acceptance of your authentic humanity. The shadow teaches that you cannot fully love yourself or anyone else without first embracing your own darkness. Only when you extend compassion to your flaws and hidden pain can you truly empathize with others, creating bonds of profound understanding and genuine intimacy. You've spent your entire life believing that to be lovable, worthy, or successful, you needed to hide your darkness. But your shadow has finally revealed its most powerful truth. It's your darkness that makes you whole, lovable, resilient, and truly powerful. It's your darkness that connects you deeply to others, to meaning, and ultimately, to the full spectrum of life itself. Now imagine waking up tomorrow, no longer afraid of the darkness within. Imagine feeling the weight lift from your shoulders as you finally see yourself clearly, completely, authentically, perhaps for the very first time. Imagine the incredible power of knowing, deep in your bones, that every part of you, shadow and light alike, is worthy of acceptance, understanding, and love. As you stand at this threshold, ready to fully embrace this revolutionary truth, remember, your shadow has always been there, patiently waiting, quietly guiding, silently teaching. Its lessons were never punishment. They were gifts, difficult, but profound. Your shadow's greatest lesson, ultimately, is that true freedom comes not by running from darkness, but by courageously, compassionately walking through it, embracing every part of yourself along the way. You've journeyed deeply into the abyss, faced your fears, challenged your illusions, and now, finally, you've returned with the most powerful realization of all. You are enough, fully, completely, authentically enough, shadow and all. As you carry this truth forward, ask yourself one final question. Will you continue living fragmented and afraid? Or will you step boldly, compassionately, powerfully into a life built on radical authenticity, profound self-acceptance, and the boundless freedom that awaits you when you embrace your shadow fully? Your shadow has shown you the way. The choice now is yours.